These are the 10 best explosive power exercises for Jiu-Jitsu and other grappling arts. Now we know based on a brand new 2024 meta-analysis that elite Jiu-Jitsu practitioners are stronger and produce more power than sub-elite Jiu-Jitsu practitioners. It means that while technique is important, having a strength and power base is only going to help you with your Jiu-Jitsu. So these 10 exercises will be different to what I would class as the 10 best exercises for MMA or striking because of the spectrum I see combat sports on. For example, strikers I see more as a velocity or fast ground contact side. MMA is in the middle. Jiu-Jitsu and grappling, we see longer ground contacts and having to move loads quickly. Hence, a lot of these power exercises won't be fast ground contact or plyometric style. They'll be more jump variations or weightlifting derivatives. So number one is the Snatch Hypo. You can do these from hang blocks from the floor, however you want to do them in a training cycle. But the nice thing about the Snatch Hypo is you must extend to propel the bar vertically. You don't have to worry about a catch position. You don't have to worry too much about mobility getting under the bar. You're able to move the bar quickly and you're able to move heavy loads, which is why I deem it a great exercise for grapplers. Now, I will say that it is a little more technical than other variations to use, but if you can learn something like this, it's only going to benefit you for power development, but also upper back development and developing the traps and upper back muscles, which are highly important. Now, the snatch variations I like alongside the clean variations, but the snatch variations have you more over the bar and more parallel to the floor, so you end up nailing the back even harder. Typically, I like to do sets of 3 to 5 reps, depending if I'm looking for a more strength and size stimulus versus a more power stimulus, or I'm looking at anywhere at the lower end of that spectrum. Exercise number 2, we're looking at the power clean. Of course, this makes most lists. Again, you don't have to do the catch position, so the power clean could be a clean high pull. It could even just be a plain clean pull. But if you can do the Olympic lifts, the power clean is a great exercise for that. It'll allow you to load this movement heavier than you typically would with the snatch variation. Yes, there are wrist mobility and shoulder mobility components that you need to have to be able to do this successfully. And obviously a lot of time practicing these technical lifts. However, if you can learn them and you can do them, it's a great exercise to do and covers similar muscle groups to that snatch hypo. Number 3 is the push press, and overhead movements tend to be underused in combat sports. And what I like about the push press, especially for Jiu-Jitsu, you are training the ability to transfer force from your feet through to your hands. Now, typically that would be perfect for strikers who are having to do that often, but even for grapplers, being able to effectively use your body as a whole to move something heavy overhead is only going to help translate to when you are on the mats, especially during stand-up. Now, the push press doesn't have to be done in isolation. You can also use the power jerk, which is a slightly different variation. If you struggle to be in that front rack position or in the overhead position, you can use landmines to do this as well. So a landmine push press can be a variation to use instead, or a landmine jerk. Exercise 4 is the simple version of what I have just discussed in the first 2 exercises, and that's a medicine ball scoop toss. With the scoop tosses, you can go heavy. Typically when we're talking about, say, medicine ball punch throws or chest throws, typically I like to do those lighter for the speed component, but for scoop tosses, you can go as heavy as you can and launch that thing as high as possible. That's going to give you similar stimulus to the Olympic lifts that I talked about earlier. So that is the easy version if you've got the space and if you have heavy medicine balls, you're good to go. When I'm talking about heavy, I'm talking about 5+ kilos. So there's like, I think that's 10+ pounds you're looking at to throw over your head. You can throw it for height, or you can throw it over your head for distance. Those are 2 different variations you can do for scoop tosses. Number 5 is the broad jump bound. This would be considered a quote unquote slow stretch shortening cycle, jump or plyometric, versus a fast stretch shortening cycle, which would be something like jumping rope, a hurdle hop, drop jump, etc. Now, this is a more advanced broad jump version because you're doing continuous jumps, so you're having to get the timing from jump to jump. You can just do standing broad jumps, walk back to the start and do standing broad jump again with single jumps. That would be like a regression. So you can start there and then you can progress and do something like the broad jump bound. You're developing power in the legs, you're developing stiffness in the lower body to be able to transfer force effectively, and you're developing a rhythm while you're jumping. It also takes you out of the typical up and down movements you're often doing in the gym and has you projecting force horizontally. Number 6, we're into more jumps, loaded jumps. Again, you can use loaded jumps instead of the Olympic lifts if you don't want to learn the Olympic lifts or you don't have the time for whatever reason. Loaded jumps make a good substitute. You can do loaded jumps in a variety of ways. Holding dumbbells is really nice, especially if you're doing lighter versions. I like to do 10% of body mass total weight with 2 dumbbells. That's a good way of doing loaded jumps there. You can do it with a barbell on your back. Works really well if you're doing something like high volume power training, or you're just doing jump squats. Within the Sweet Science of Fighting Underground, a lot of the Dominate, the mats, cage, and ring programs in there use the jump squat with the barbell because you can load it a little heavier. So we're looking at 30 to 40% back squat 1RM when you're doing this. But you're not limited to that. You can go heavier, lighter. And if you don't want to jump with the barbell on your back or holding dumbbells, you can also use a trap bar. A trap bar is a good variation as well. It just takes the load off the spine if you have previous back injuries or any other injuries that flare up from doing something like that. So you have lots of options with loaded jumps to be able to develop power in the lower body. Number 7, very simple one, the box jump. I had to add this to the list. Again, it's another jump with the long ground contact. The nice thing about the box jump is you are jumping up onto a surface and you reduce impact. That is the idea of using a box jump. One, you get quote unquote knowledge of result. So if you don't make the box, which you should always make the box, don't make it too high. You can correct yourself, you can lower the box, whatever. But most importantly is you don't have the impact from landing. So when you see people jump on boxes and then jump off the box to do another box jump, that is a legit exercise depending on what you're trying to do. But if you're doing a box jump, you're typically looking to remove impact forces from landing. Maybe you're in a training cycle where you're doing a lot of other things and you don't want that stress. Maybe you're getting very close to a tournament and you don't want that stress because your jiu-jitsu training volume is very high. Then you might use something like a box jump just to give your legs a break from hitting the ground often from jumping. Number 8 is one that is more of a fuck it exercise, I would say, because it kind of throws all technique out the window. And I've labeled it an explosive Penl Row, but Penl Rows are already explosive, but whatever. I'm just naming it what it is because it doesn't really have a name. But it's like a hybrid deadlift / row. And essentially you're yanking it off the floor heavy and rowing it to your stomach. And I have this exercise as part of the 6-week competition cycle in the Dominate the Mats and the Sweet Science of Fighting Underground, essentially to peak for competition. I really like it because it's just a brute force exercise. You have to yank something heavy off the ground and row it. So instead of trying to keep a really strict position and really trying to focus on the back muscles developing, this is just a full body power exercise. If you're able to, yank sets of 3 to 5 with 2 to 3 plates on the bar, you're going to be manhandling other people on the mats doing that kind of exercise. So number 9, we're going back into the Olympic lifts, hang power snatch. Now I know a lot of people don't talk about using snatch variations often. They're typically sticking with the clean variations. Interestingly, I've found people with shoulder problems tend to tolerate the snatch variations better than the clean variations, which is counterintuitive to what some people may say, which is interesting. I think the wider grip for the snatch when it's overhead doesn't cause the same problems as when you have a narrower grip, hence less shoulder issues. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. The snatch variations are faster than the clean variations, but they are lighter as well. So there's always a trade-off with each. The hang power snatch is nice because it's relatively easier to learn than say a power snatch from the floor. You can do from different hang positions, even just from the hip, to make it really easy. Plus you get a mobility stimulus out of it from having the bar overhead as well. And then finally, number 10, the easiest weightlifting derivative is the hang jump shrug. This is a weightlifting derivative that no Olympic weightlifter does. It's not an exercise that's ever prescribed, but it's a derivative that has been created from the Olympic lifts for sports performance. And essentially you're just dipping down and then jumping with a heavy load in your hands. And the nice thing about it is it really doesn't require any or much technical input. You can learn it relatively quickly and you can load it relatively heavy. So you're kind of getting a big stimulus without having to learn too much, which makes it a really good weightlifting derivative to use. Now, this is just a short list of 10. There are a bunch of other exercises you can use, of course. What fits you might not fit someone else. So have a look at this list, see if there's something you can maybe look to progress towards or use within your training. Typically, because they are power-based exercises, you're typically looking at a maximum of 5 reps in a set. And most of the time I wouldn't even go to 5 unless you're looking for a more strength hypertrophy stimulus from some of these. So you're looking at more in that 1 to 3 rep range. If you're doing, say, broad jump bounds or various other loaded jumps, you can go more reps, just depending on what you're trying to get out of that training. Make sure you also download the BJJ Strength Conditioning Blueprint down in the description. It's completely free and it covers everything you need to know about strength conditioning for Jiu-Jitsu, and I'll see you in the next video.